Good morning. Now, Mr. Connell, we have Miss Critchley today.
Indeed.
Good morning, Miss Critchley. Now, as you understand, and of course you've been with us before, you're about to be asked questions by Mr. Connell. But before then, I understand you're prepared to affirm.
I am.
Sitting where you are, can you repeat these words after me? I solemnly, sincerely, and truly
I solemnly, sincerely, and truly
declare and affirm
declare and affirm
that I will tell the truth,
that I will tell the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Now, as no doubt I said on the last occasion, we have you scheduled today for probably the best part of today. We'll take a coffee break at about 11:30, but if you want to take a break at any other time, just give me an indication. And I do appreciate that it's difficult to remember to do this, but could I ask you to speak maybe a little louder, maybe a little slower than you would in normal conversation? It's important that we all hear what you have to say, and my hearing is not what it was. Now, Mr. Connell.
Thank you, Lord. Good morning, Ms. Critchley.
Morning.
I'm going to start by asking you the question I always ask witnesses at this stage, which is, to this effect, you've produced a witness statement, in your case, a witness statement with appendices for the inquiry. Are you content to adopt that statement as part of your evidence?
I am.
Thank you. Now, your background is set out in your witness statement, which we'll bring up on screen, and we'll use the witness statement as a sort of guide to take us through the issues. As you know by now, when the witness statement comes up on screen, we'll have electronic page numbers at the top. I'll probably get into the habit of using these, but if at any time you're not sure where I'm going, just let me know. The early part of your statement you set out, as is customary, who you are, and in particular for our purposes, you are the director of NSS Assure.
I am.
And you've been in that post since September 2021, NSS Assure being essentially a new organisation, which we'll come to in due course. And immediately prior to that, you held a post south of the border.
I did.
With another health body.
Yes.
And on page 214, in the first large paragraph, you describe yourself in your post as having the lead for the healthcare built environment in NHS Scotland. Is that right? That's how you would sum it up.
Yes.
Thank you. And you have responsibility for the strategic direction and delivery of the directorate, which is NHS Assure. Now, I'm conscious, and there's no issue about this, that you may have been asked from time to time during the preparation of your witness statement questions that you needed to get information on from others within NHS Assure, and you've indicated that at various points during your statement. Now, by sort of slightly reverse direction, I just want to pick up on one of the documents you produced. On page 214, you're asked about an outbreak in April 2021 of Serratia. That was, of course, at a point before you were in post.
It was.
And you point out on page 215 that one of your colleagues was involved. Now you say on page 215 that reporting systems have been included in the National Infection Prevention Control Manual since 2016.
That's correct.
And what you then go on to produce as part of your witness statement is an appendix, Appendix D, which, as you say, contains all of the changes made to that publication since 2012. Now, on my notes, my lord, that runs from page 290 to page 407 of the document in electronic terms that we have in front of us. And my lord will be relieved to know I don't intend to go through that. But can you just help me understand in what way you think having that available to the inquiry might be of assistance?
I think it was just to demonstrate the iterative nature of the NIPCM. So it is a document that has been in use since 2012, and it is updated very regularly if there are any changes to policy or in response to an outbreak like COVID. So it's just to demonstrate that it is a live document, and we do spend an inordinate amount of time making sure that the advice and guidance within it is correct.
Thank you. Now, what then happens in your witness statement is you're taken back to the Serratia incident and you're asked about IMTs and so on and so forth. Just looking at page 216, I don't think I need to take you through that material, but you list the kind of things that an IMT should do depending on the nature of the incident.
Yes.
And that list, does it come from somewhere or is it simply from your experience?
I had help with producing this list from Miss Imrie and her department, and this is what would be expected of an IMT or a PAG.
Thank you. I just really want to pick up one or two very small points in relation to that. If we go on to page 218, we're still back at this Serratia outbreak, which I know is before.
Sorry, entirely my fault. The at 216 to 17, you set out the steps to be taken in an IMT. Now, I think I had perhaps wrongly assumed that that was a summary of the text in the manual, but that's not right. Is
It may be.
Oh, it might be, right. Okay, so it might be. The information comes from Miss Imrie.
It does.
Right, okay.
Let me just go back then to 218. You asked one or two questions which are, in present purposes, not particularly controversial, but if you go to question 7 there on page 218, you're asked about something described as reporting to the policy unit. Now, you then go on to give us an answer about that. Can you just summarise what this policy unit is about?
So the policy unit that you're referring to is the Chief Nursing Officer's Directorate Healthcare Associated Infection Policy Unit. And
that's quite a mouthful.
It is. And we report all incidents and outbreaks that have a red HIAT or an amber HIAT to them, or if they have a green, if they are put onto the reporting tool, then we will also inform the policy unit of any greens that have required our support for any reason.
And you point out, I think on page 219, that there's guidance set out in a document that you produced as to the circumstances in which these reports are sent on. Is that right?
That's right, yes. So I think there was a DL in DL24 in 2024, which was around the reporting and communication requirements for outbreaks and incidents. And it talked about the responsibility of boards to report to RHI in line with the HIAT, which is part of Chapter 3 of the NIPCM.
And is that essentially what you're setting out in the middle of page 219, the way that Scottish Government comes to give oversight?
That's right.
Now, perhaps you can just help me with one point may not be entirely clear on page 219 near the foot, that you say you're aware from discussions with Assure staff that historically supervision of incident outbreak reporting could be dependent on the level of information and assurance required by the individual cabinet secretary in post at that time, or indeed on the particular chief nursing officer.
That's correct.
Now, well, first of all, has that changed?
No, that's always been the case. So if either the cabinet secretary or the CNO has had a particular interest in a type of infection or outbreak or a particular place or time, then they may well ask RHI to ask more questions of that board to clarify some issues.
So if we move on to page 220, because this is a point where you were asked a relatively short question and you thought it would be helpful to the inquiry to give us a bit more information than perhaps a single sentence. So I'm keen to allow you to work through this. The question was, what's the point of doing that? It put in colloquial terms. Sending reports to the CNOD HAI policy unit. And you've suggested there that it'd be helpful just to walk through the kind of
Yes.
genesis of this arrangement. So if we could just go through that briefly. I'm not going to call up on the screen all of the documents you referred to, but if at any time you think the answer would be assisted by seeing the document, please just indicate and we'll do that.
Thank you.
In many cases, I think you have probably lifted paragraphs that you think are helpful. Is that correct?
Yes, we have.
So you start the tale on page 220 in 2000, where there's a joint working group which publishes a report on managing the risk of healthcare-associated infection.
That's
And
correct.
We see the bundle reference there, bundle 52, page 5. Now, in terms of matters, you've picked a number of key recommendations, is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Including the adoption of national standards for IPC, decontamination of reusable medical devices. Is that two or one? One recommendation. Is that all one recommendation, those first two sentences, first two lines?
Yes.
One or two?
One.
Thank you. Risk management, strengthening accountability and governance, enforcement of surveillance and reporting. Interesting that I said enforcement, I misquoted, it's enhancement.
Enhancement.
Yes, and staff education training. So you think that's where we go to start, and then the next stopping point is the report of the Watt inquiry, is that right?
It is, yeah.
Following an outbreak of salmonella, and that was in 2001 running into 2002, we see from page 221. Now, we see that the report appeared at that time with 47 recommendations. Can you help me understand why of the 47 you've picked the 2 or 3 that you have?
Well, one of the recommendation 30 talks about a classification system for infection outbreaks and episodes to be drawn up. And that's what's resulted in the Hyatt green, amber, red status. So the first time that we thought about classifying outbreaks, and that the resultant, how we use that now, is to classify as green, amber and red.
Yep. You've also picked recommendation 33, which seems to focus on the chief executive's role.
And that was just really about the accountability for infections within an organisation at that time.
And then if we go into 222, there's another reference to the appointment of an issue manager. And then you say on page 222, the profile of prevention and control of HAIs was transformed. That's quite a colourful word, if I can put it that way. Is that a word you think's justified in context?
I think that probably it was, I meant to say that there were some significant milestones that came out over the next few years, and there was a significant amount of work done around healthcare associated infections and reporting.
And you list a series of these HAI infection control standards, HAI action plan, an educational initiative, organizational issues and reporting coming out in 2009. So you regard these all as further steps on the way, is that right?
They are.
And then we're back actually at the Watt report. Sorry, we're not. We're now going to the Vale of Leven inquiry, which reported in 2014. And again, what you've done here is you've selected a number of recommendations that you think are of note. 46, infection control manager to have direct responsibility for the IPC service. National guidance to be issued. Just pausing there on recommendation 49, since it's a topic that's come up perhaps tangentially earlier in this inquiry. At least some people have asked, if you've got an infection control manager in charge of the infection control service, should that not be a clinician? Because it doesn't seem always to be somebody with clinical qualification. Do you have any view on that?
Yes. So I'm not technically qualified, and yet I lead a technical part of our organisation. I think as long as you have an understanding of the processes in place and you have subject matter experts, as in ICNs and ICDs who can support you, I don't see why an infection control manager would need to be clinically qualified.
Thank you.
Although, having said that, they do need to have a good understanding of the processes in place and have a good working relationship with their clinical colleagues to ensure that they're properly informed.
Thank you. And you set out one or two other recommendations from Vale of Leven. And then you say in the middle of page 223 that pulling all that together, that these are the types of background factors that have informed what you described there as national oversight of HC. Yes, sometimes HAI and sometimes HCAI incidents. And they ensure the Scottish Government is appropriately informed. Is that important?
That's really important. It's important for a number of reasons, one of which is that if a health board has a small number of incidents or outbreaks of a particular pathogen, they may not think that that is important, or they may not understand that actually there may be a theme across a number of hospitals or health boards that are reporting the same infections. And I think that unless we have a holistic view of what's happening over a broader area, we aren't sure and we can't mitigate risk in the infection prevention control arena. And there have been cases of single or just one or two cases in a health board and one or two cases of something in another health board that has actually led to a recall of, say, perhaps a piece of medical equipment or something like that.
I see. Thank you. Now, the next question you asked is whether there's a provision for making more requests for more information, and you explain how that operates. And the RHI notify the policy unit, can I just call it the policy unit for short? And then the policy unit review each incident and brief appropriate parties. So that's the way it works, is that right?
That's the way it worked, yes.
Now, can I move then from the general to the specific, at least for a moment, which is to ask you about the refurbishment of 2A and B in the,
Yes.
we call it the new hospital for simplicity. I want to ask you a number of things about this, and perhaps to take you through a little more slowly than you might otherwise have expected some of the material that you've set out, because quite a number of parties to this inquiry, for fairly obvious reasons in many cases, are interested in what happened and why, and it has generated quite a few questions. So, the order in which the questions have been asked don't necessarily lend themselves to us getting everything correct. So if I get out of order, please just correct me. After some introductory material on page 224, you then go on to page 225, explaining that in June, so this would be just about when Assure was set up.
Yes.
In fact, almost this, it was June, wasn't it?
It was June, yes.
June 2021. NHS GDC approached the Assure team, or an individual within the Assure team, the senior engineer water, to request support. And the scope was outlined in a terms of reference document agreed between Assure and the NHS GGC project manager, and was limited to water only. Now, I'm going to come back to that point because a number of parties have asked us about that. Now, if you skip the next sentence, the summary, which you've lifted from the terms of reference, I think,
Yes.
talks about attending fortnightly progress meetings when available, fortnightly technical meetings, weekly testing, site inspection visits, and so on. Now, an outside reader might think that was expecting a commitment by someone in Assure to do the things set out in the terms of reference. Would you agree?
Yes.
Perhaps what doesn't emerge from the paper is the point you make little in front of the bullet point, which is that the expectation was that NHS GDC would explicitly ask Assure if they were wanted at the meeting. Now, I'm right to think, first of all, we don't find that, come only if asked provision anywhere in the paperwork. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I think that was a verbal conversation between the engineer, his manager, and the project manager at GGC at the time.
Now, I think we'll come on to an explanation that you give as to why it was like that. But there is a significant difference, is there not, between being asked to help, list of things to do set out, and a list of things to do, but only come if you're asked. They're quite different commitments. Would you agree?
Yes.
And what you say at the foot of page 225, in fact, is that Assure didn't go to any of the meetings.
No, they didn't go to any of those meetings.
Because you were never asked.
That's correct. However, that doesn't mean that they weren't involved.
I'm going to come perhaps on I think you probably deal with it on the next page. Again, just looking at this from the perspective of an outside viewer looking in, it looks a little odd. The national agency's been asked for help, series of duties set out, but you don't go to any of the meetings. On page 226, am I right in summarising what you tell us in answer to question 14, that the reality was that a particular individual had moved from, I don't know if there's any secret about it, it's ACOM. Who were helping the board.
That's right, they were technical advisors.
To Assure.
That's correct.
And somebody in the board wanted to make sure that if they needed him, they could get hold of him.
Yes,
Is that a reasonable summary of your understanding of why this was set up?
it is indeed. And I think also the GGC team had lost a member as well, and they wanted some continuity around support until AECOM's new technical advisor was up and running.
No. No one went to the meetings that were envisaged by the terms of reference.
No, but we did attend other meetings.
Can you explain? Well, this is perhaps a little puzzling to an outside reader. You've been asked to take on a particular term of reference, turn up at these meetings. You're never asked to do that, so you don't go. How does it then come to be that you are at different meetings?
So we attended, I think it was one of the water advisory groups, but Mr. Beattie also attended site on numerous occasions. He provided observation reports and photographs, which are in one of the bundles.
I'll look at that just in a moment, if I may. I understand the factual narrative that you give me that Mr. Beattie did, I think what you describe here as a number of site walkarounds.
That's right.
How did it come to be that he was doing these site walkarounds if it's not part of the terms of reference?
It was what we were asked for. Right. So at the time, and you know, I wasn't in post at the time. However, I think that GGC wanted some continuity. Mr. Beattie had been the technical advisor from AECOM. They asked, could we provide some provision? We agreed to that. They then, I think, only asked Mr. Beattie to come round on the walkarounds and to have a look at where they were up to and to give some comment on what he found on the walkarounds.
So we can give some context, particularly to those in the room. I wonder if we could look at Bundle 52, Volume 2, page 73, please. That should come up on your screen. And if we look towards the bottom half of that page, this is Mr. Beattie that you've referred to.
Yes.
Getting in touch, I think, with Mr. Huddleston, who is the project manager or something of that kind.
Yes, he was, yes.
And listing, as you say, observations. Someone's put new flooring down, but no one's put blue covering on the feet. And so on and so forth. And we just go on to the next page just to make sure we see all of it. And then further, what you might describe detailed observations relating to the site operation in the context of the water systems. Is that fair?
It is. And if we could refer back to the terms of reference, they do say at the bottom that we were to produce no documentation as NHS Assure. However, Mr. Beattie felt it was important to let GGC know some of the things that he'd observed when he was walking around. Okay,
well, let's just, particularly, so his lordship notes will follow that. If we go to page 72, now is this the terms of reference document?
It is.
Yes, I see at the very foot of that page, HFS, never mind the nomenclature for the moment, will not produce any documentation during the support other than record photographs and confirmation of items raised during site visit reviews. Might be slightly ambiguous as to whether site visit reviews should be documented, but in any event, that's what Mr. Beattie did.
He did.
And you've identified several more, and I think I'm right in saying they're along similar lines where he's produced a list of things he saw on site which he felt he should record.
Yes, and he did that on, had a site visit on the 22nd of July, the 5th of August and the 8th of October.
Right. Now, we have these in bundle 52, Lord, at 73, 82, 9 and 93.
Sorry, you've lost me there. We're still on the terms of reference.
No, we're now moving from the terms of reference to where one finds the reports that let me just call them reports for the moment, Mr. Beattie prepared, an example of which was at bundle 52, volume 2, page 73. Similar examples are at 82 and 93.
Thank you.
And my colleagues have helpfully brought up page 92 just while we're here. Again, it's a detailed list of
It is.
items, and the other one will be the same. So the point you then go on to make, if we go back to your witness statement, is that although Mr. Beattie is doing these walkarounds and reporting on them, he isn't signing off, is that right?
That's correct.
So he's not going to the meetings, but he's doing some walkarounds because that's what you've been asked. Mm-hmm. He's doing detailed reports, mm-hmm. but he's not signing off or handing over, correct?
No, he's not. That would be the technical advisor who would be doing that.
The GGC yes. employed technical advisor.
That's right.
And so that was the limit, as it were, of what Assure was doing at that point? No, it wasn't. So slightly later. Well, that's what I'm just going to come to.
No, at that point it was, yes.
Yeah, because on page 226, you say, these steps continued with limited input from Assure until February 22, and then something happened in February 22, where there was a further development. Is that right?
It is, but I could also give the inquiry an update on what happened over the December period as well, if that would be okay.
Yes, well, please add to our understanding. That would be very helpful.
So at the beginning of December, I think round about the 6th, Ian Storer...
This is December 2021.
December 2021.
Thank you.
Ian Storer, who is our AD of Engineering, and Annette Rankin attended a water meeting, so a meeting about the water issues on 2A, 2B. They were asked to attend as critical friends.
Hang on, pause there, and I'm not sure we've heard the phrase critical friends.
That's Ian's colloquialism around describing our function.
Right.
Yeah, it's not an unknown expression.
No, but that's his understanding as what he was.
Yes.
They weren't there as official participants. They were there as sort of attendees to help.
Yes.
Right. So I apologise for interrupting your narrative. This is December.
Well, could I interrupt the narrative by asking you maybe to go a little bit slower, because this is, we don't have the help of the statement.
I apologise. So
attended what I've noted as a water meeting.
That's right. Yes, on the 6th of December. So, and then following on from that, on the 8th of December, we received an email from Ewan Smith around proposed actions to address the water issues that were discussed in that meeting. And Ewan was, I think that he was a Deputy Director of Estates from GGC. He sent that email to...
Sorry, I missed that. Mr. Smith was...
I think he was an Associate Director, Deputy Director of Estates.
So he's GGC.
GGC, yes.
Right.
So then there was an email trail around, on the 8th, around... Ian sent on some information to myself, Laura and Annette, read some of the issues. And then the activity timeline email came through, which was what was proposed by Ewan in his email of earlier that day. And then there was an email trail from Ian, Mr. Storer, including Miss Imrie and Miss Rankin, and they produced some response of that. Then we can go to evidence in Bundle 14, Volume 3. but I don't know what page. I do apologise.
Well, just tell us what it is, and
Okay.
we'll locate
It was an email from Annette Rankin to Tom Steele and Sandra Devine with some questions that we felt it would be beneficial for them to be able to answer in order to address some of the issues. We then sent a chaser email on the 15th of December as well. And on the 16th of December, Mr. Steele replied to Annette and saying that he would meet with me and my team to discuss. I've had a look in the diary and I don't have any recollection, and I can't find any evidence of that, although we may well have spoken on the phone, but I don't recall that.
Now, I think what you've been telling us, if I'm picking this up correctly, is that there were some email exchanges in December, which the inquiry probably doesn't have.
I don't think you do. We'd be happy to supply them for you.
Could you do that?
Yes, yes, of course.
That would be helpful. If they just your solicitors will know where to send them, and we'll make sure that they're available to all the participants in the usual way. And then you link that to some items in bundle 14, which we can no doubt find in due course. In any event, led to a suggestion of a meeting, and you don't now recollect the details of that.
No. So then on the 21st of January
2022 now.
2022, Annette, Miss Rankin, also sent another email to Mr. Steele with the offer of the Short Life Working Group and a walk around to support GGC in the reopening of 2A, 2B.
We do have material on that topic.
You do, yes.
But I'm going to press the pause button, at least temporarily, because we come back to that in your witness statement later, if I may. Just so we don't get out of sync with the sequence in your witness statement, in your witness statement, the first event that you identify after the walkarounds continuing on a limited basis is a communication from the Chief Nursing Officer. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
In February 2022. So we go to page 227. I just want to ask you about this. Can we see bundle 52, volume 5, please? Page 84. Now, if we go to the second half of that page, is this the email that you're referring to?
It is.
So this is going from Professor McMahon to various people, including yourself.
Yes.
Right, just a matter of small detail. So in the answer, just to make sure I'm keeping up, in the answer below 15 on page 227, there's a reference to an email sent by the CMO. Should that be CNO?
Yes, it should be.
Okay, thank you.
And the email you're referring to there, I take it, is the one we're looking at the moment.
It is.
Which, as I said, goes from Professor McMahon to various people, including yourself and Mary Morgan, who's the Chief Executive.
That's correct.
At the time. And essentially is suggesting a meeting to discuss where next. Is that fair?
Yes. That was a meeting of the AARG group. But myself and colleagues met incredibly regularly with Glasgow over the next week or so.
Now, we'll probably come back to this, but also in the answer to question 15, you talk about the supported pathway. Now, what do you mean by that?
So Because we were in the middle of the commissioning phase of this refurbishment, and because there was a time constraint around the necessity to reopen the ward, we were asked what could we do to help support GGC on having some assurance that their water was safe within the unit. And so we worked on a pathway provision to mitigate the risks. And the pathway was based on the principles of a KSAR. So it looked at risk assessment, water sampling, water management, so flushing and dosing, and how much involvement the water strategy group had, so some governance issues as well. And we came up with a pathway document, which was an Excel spreadsheet that GGC could drop their evidence into, and we could see that they had evidence around supported.
Right. So it's at the risk of just saying back to you what you just said to me. I mean, Assure was producing, as it were, a framework,
Yes.
presumably with questions, and it was for GGC to essentially report what had been done.
Yes.
Right. And again, so I'm keeping up. It's what had been done specific to wards 2A and 2B.
Yes, and in relation to water only.
In relation to water only, and including perhaps general water governance questions. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Well, let me just ask you, because you've been asked that in your witness statement at page 227. The issues around Ward 2A in particular had been, well, let me just call them controversial in a variety of ways. Obviously, issues had arisen, lots of things were having to be done. A fair number of these were focused on ventilation provision. A lot of the work that was being done was focusing on ventilation provision. Now, from an outsider's perspective, looking in on your organisation, it seems a little odd, perhaps, that you're not all over the question of ventilation as well as helping out on water. Is there any explanation for that?
We were never asked to support around ventilation. So at the time that the refurbishment was happening, that was in the majority pre-NHS Assure. We were in the process of developing the KSAR workbooks, etc. However, there was no mandate for GGC to engage our services or to utilise our staff collaboratively.
Now, when you say there was no mandate, am I right in understanding you mean that no one had asked you to do it?
That's correct, yes.
Or instructed you to do
Yes.
it, depending on where the communication comes from.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're basically being asked in the witness statement, well, is that not a bit odd? Should you not have been saying to someone up the line, surely we should be involved in ventilation as much as in water?
And I think that probably had we had time, we may well have done that. However, at that point in time, when the refurbishment was happening, that was prior to NHS Assure. So the usual way of asking for support from HFS was to do that, was to ask for support. There wasn't a KSAR process in place at that point in time. And therefore, this refurbishment also, there are two criteria that you have to meet for a KSAR to be enacted with an organisation or engaged with an organisation. And that is that the refurbishment or new build is above the delegated authority level for that board, or it has been had an outline business case, full business case, go through the SIG meeting, and this didn't meet either of those thresholds, but it was prior to the development and start of Assure.
Again, just from my notes, you said 2 criteria.
Yes.
I seem to only manage to know 1 criterion. The first criteria is that the project, whether it was refurbishment or new build, had gone through a process of either outline business case or full business case having been considered by the
Yes.
CIG, the
Yeah.
Capital Investment Group.
That's right.
Right. So is that 1 criterion or?
No, there's 2. So the second criteria is that the project does not, for us to be engaged, it has to exceed their delegated authority level.
Yep.
So at least in terms of the criteria laid down for KSAR, even something like the rebuilding of the ventilation system of Ward 2A wouldn't qualify because it would never be out with the board's borrowing power.
That's right, but that's not to say that they couldn't request support from us in a different way. So we do still have the majority of our work comes out with the healthcare build KSAR process. So we do still have a commissioning process through which a board is able to ask for support from a subject matter expert.
I perhaps should know the answer to this question. Assure was established in June 2021. How far had the refurbishment project progressed by the middle of 2021?
I think that it was quite far along.
I mean, things had been built.
Oh yes, things had been built. There were, the wards were there, infrastructure was being put in. So it wasn't like it was just at the planning stage or anything. It was actually at the construction and probably commissioning stage.
Right.
You mentioned a moment or 2 ago, it's always the challenge of keeping some kind of chronological order. The provision of a pathway and what that was, the spreadsheet that you explained to us. And is this what you're discussing on page 228 of your witness statement in answer to question 18?
Yes.
I'm not sure. The document you're referring to there, is that the pathway or is that the standard KSAR material?
I think it's the standard KSAR material, but it was just to demonstrate that it would be following the KSAR principles.
And in terms of what was actually done, you identify in paragraph 19 on the same page the individuals, Mr. Storer, Ms. Rankin, Michael Weinbrunn.
Yes, Dr. Weinbrunn.
Who's a consultant microbiologist, and also Dr. Lee, who we've come across already. You asked them to provide input and expertise.
We did.
So you're producing a pathway. Are you, as it were, ensuring compliance with the pathway, or are you simply producing the pathway to show what needs to be done?
We're producing the pathway to show what needs to be done. The responsibility still lay with NHS GGC, and it was up to them to ensure that the mitigation actions were taken forward.
Okay. Thank you. Now, you then asked a number of other questions, which are, I think, designed to identify where there are links between the processes that you're responsible for and other processes which arise under the healthcare system. You asked, for instance, in question 20 about validation, but before I go to the detail of that, can I just ask this? in the course of evidence from Dr. Chaput not that long ago, the inquiry heard about a particular difficulty that had been encountered in the water system of 2A, in particular, that there was what I'll describe as gross microbial contamination discovered, notwithstanding flushing and other arrangements during the period that it was being redone. Were you aware of that in the sense of Assure?
I think that we were aware of that during the meetings in December, which is why Mr. Storr and Miss Rankin then became involved, and the emails from Miss Rankin thereafter to Mr. Steele with an offer of support and walk around.
Right. Could I just run that back? Now, Mr. Connell used the expression gross microbial contamination. Is that a quotation from the Water Research journal article?
No.
Right. What's the...
The source is simply my summary of the finding that there was significant, substantial microbial contamination discovered when steps were being taken to consider moving forward.
Right. So the Chaput article may or may not use the word gross.
Yes.
It probably does use the expression microbial proliferation. You were aware, Ms. Critchley, of microbial proliferation having been identified in the course of or possibly commissioning of the refurbishment works as at the date of the meeting in December 2021 that you mentioned to us.
That's my understanding.
I'm keen to keep up. Right.
Obliged, it may be that something along these lines is mentioned in the emails that we don't have, but which Ms. Critchley will facilitate our being supplied with. Now, I can probably move reasonably quickly past the next few questions. You're asked about, well, what connection is there between validation and NS Assure? And what you say in answer to question 20 is, well, there's a number of circumstances in which we might be involved. There's an AE provision, which I'll just take from you now. As of November 23, Assure can provide the services as authorised engineer to healthcare operations in Scotland. Is that right?
Yes, we can. Although not all boards choose to utilise us, some of them do have experts commissioned from elsewhere.
Yeah. So it's an option that you make available. It's not a requirement.
No, it's not.
Thank you. And then you point out, and I think you've probably already covered this in your evidence, that you may be asked for help, in which case you'll apply the kind of case R principles. And then you're asked about L8 assessments on page 229, and you say, well, these are things that are the responsibility of the board.
That's correct.
But if you were involved, either because you were helping with a case R type process or through an authorised engineer audit, then that's something you'd be checking.
That's right. Slightly different roles. So the AE may conduct the audit, and the case R would ask for evidence that an audit has been conducted.
And if one's looking to see whether an L8 Legionella water assessment has been done, that could crop up in either of these.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
You're asked about who you were communicating with, and you probably already indicated that in the context, at least, of Professor Steele. But I see also at the foot of page 229, Professor Wallace, is that right?
That's correct.
And you asked your colleagues who they were communicating with, and they added Sandra Devine, Jerry Cox. it seems to be the States and Mr. Huddleston that we came across earlier.
That's right.
And did you understand Mr. Huddleston was the project manager for the refurbishment project?
That's my understanding, yes.
And then you're asked on page 230, and this may be coming back to the sign-off point, well, what about risk assessments and so on? What were done? And you say, well, wasn't really our input, is that right?
Yes, although we looked at risk assessments in relation to water, we didn't for anything else.
And you say, I think in answer to question 23, you've checked to see if anyone has any recollection of going through the sort of final testing.
Yes.
And no one could find that.
No, one of the briefing, we produced a briefing statement on the 24th of February that said what input we'd had to wards 2A and 2B and what actions would need to be taken before the ward could be opened. But we didn't have sight of those final testing or handover materials. And I do have a couple of emails from, I think it was Angela Wallace, back to Laura Imrie on the, I think it was the 28th of February. Laura took over from me around the ARG work because I was in America for my son's wedding.
And what, can we just have a date for that?
I left on the 27th and the ARG meeting was on the 28th of February.
2022.
2022.
Thank you. Now, one of the topics that has generated a degree of controversy.
So can I just confirm that? So what we have is at your answer to question 23 on 230 is assure commence the pathway work. Now, is that a between 20 and 20, the 20th and 22nd of February? Now, is that the issue of the framework document?
It is,
Right.
yes.
So on the 20th, 22nd February, Assure provides GGC with essentially an indication of what they should do.
Yes.
And then GGC engage with that. They
absolutely did, yes.
Respond.
They actually gave us the first tranche of information on the 17th before we'd finalised the question set on the pathway.
Right. So the envisaged process of here's what you should do, we've done it, proceeded through the latter part of February until the opening of the
our involvement ended round about the 28th of February when the when the ARG took the decision that they were assured that the ward water supply was safe.
My recollection is the ward was announced as opened in the latter part of March. I
believe so, yes.
Yeah, right. I'm thinking about maybe about the 21st of March or then. Right. Sorry, Mr. Collins.
Well, can I just make sure I've not missed it, Ms. Critchley? When you were giving the start of that answer, you said, I think there are emails involving Laura Imrie. Are these ones you've identified as ones that the inquiry has or not?
I don't think that you do, so we would be happy to make those available to you as well.
Well, maybe you could add those email exchanges and then we'll make these suitable arrangements for them to be published. What are they about? Do you know?
They're just about, so the way that we communicated and collaborated was we had a large number of Teams calls, but we also had a Teams channel in which we put the document and GGC put their evidence in. And we noted that on the 4th, after we provided our briefing statement, that there was a download of more information or an upload of more information to the Teams channel. Laura picked that up as I was away to say, we now don't have any more involvement. What would you like us? Is there any particular reason that you've put more information in? And I think that Angela Wallace responded to Laura to say, no, it was just for the sake of ensuring that we had everything in one place for information and completeness. You don't need to do anything.
Thank you very much. I think it would be useful if we added these emails to our ever-growing collection. Now, let me bring you back to a statement you made a little earlier about a possible short life working group, because depending on one's perspective, it has, for instance, been suggested, well, Assure offered to come and have a look at everything, and GGC said, no, go away. We don't want that. And I'd like you to try and move from my personal colloquial summary of things that parties have suggested to what your understanding was actually happened. So if we go to page 230, we see that in the middle of the page there, that your initial, that's you as being Assure, your initial suggested way forward was to establish what you describe as a short life working group to explore and discuss relevant details, including testing, and undertake a walk round of the refurbished wards. So, first of all, why did you suggest that?
Because we found that that's usually a good way to do a piece of work in a limited amount of time. And it came out of the water meeting on the 6th of December. So we had some email conversations between the 7th of December and the 21st of December. On the 21st of December, Miss Rankin sent an email to Professor Steele about meeting as a short life working group and walking around the unit to support the opening in respect of water. On the 28th, we have an email from Professor Steele to Miss Rankin, in which he said that there wasn't enough time for us to pull together a short life working group. Annette then sent out an email to some of our microbiologists around the water results, and there was conversations backwards and forwards until we then were asked to link into the Advice and Assurance Review Group, the ARG, on the 17th of February when I became involved.
I think we picked this up later in your witness statement, so we might just go there. Because one of the questions which has now arisen is, what the proper understanding should be of Assure's role in the reopening of the ward, given the constraints that you've explained to us. So you've got, on the water side, you've got an initial suggestion of meetings not required, then some walkarounds, no signing off of anything, but then there's the pathway process on which you're assisting, is that right? And on ventilation...
Not in any technical way whatsoever. I facilitate it.
So you're providing the pathway, but you're not inputting any technical input into that? And nothing on the ventilation side?
No.
Now, I'll try and get back into the sequence if I can. So if somebody said, well, I've Assure signing off on this new ward, the answer would be what?
No.
No.
I suppose you didn't really have any structure within which to operate.
We didn't.
I mean, it's...
And you picked this up on page 232 of your witness statement, about halfway down the page. you actually say this, while Assure was able to support GGC in the reopening of wards 2A and B in relation to water safety by developing a pathway, we could not offer assurance in respect to the wider ward environment due to the tight timeframes and our lack of detailed involvement in the refurbishment work. You wouldn't, yeah, so the work was well underway, as His Lordship has taken from you, by the time
It was.
you were created, as it were.
Yes.
And then you didn't get involved in ventilation at all. And then you're asked, I suppose, slightly repetitively, well, did you offer to go and inspect it? And you said, well, what we offered was the short-term
Short life working group.
working group.
But Mr. Beattie did go and do some walkarounds that resulted in the emails that we discussed earlier.
Yes. So if we go to 233, where you've been asked about this offer, the next question, 27, well, what form did the offer take? And the answer is, well, initially a verbal offer, is that right?
Yes, initially a verbal offer, and then that was followed up by the email from Miss Rankin on the 21st of December.
Could that be let me just check the document. In 28, you reference an email of 21st of January. Is that a misprint? Shall we get the email up? Bundle 14, page 350.
No, it was January. Sorry,
it was January.
December. Sorry, that's my
okay.
mistake.
So then there was an email of the 21st of January from Annette Rankin to Tom Steele and Sandra Devine. And then what you've done there, I assume, is to lift a quotation from the content of that email. Is that right?
Yes.
And this is the short life working group facilitated by RHI and HFS, which includes microbiology, clinical and scientific input to work with NHS GGC and review the work undertaking, results being obtained, risk mitigations in an attempt to support NHS GGC's repatriation of children back towards 2A and B. So that appears to offer quite wide-ranging support in basically checking. Yes. Is that right?
Yes.
Was that the intention?
Yes.
And the response was it would take too long.
Yes.
Would it have taken a long time?
No. As you can see from the timeline, when we were supporting the water, we were asked to do that on the 17th. We'd had the download of first information by the 17th. We had the pathway formulated by the 22nd, and we had reviewed the information and produced a briefing by the 24th.
So the short life working group might not have taken a great deal of time to put together.
No. We would have made that a priority.
Is there a distinction between putting the group together and it completing what it can do?
Yeah. Perhaps that's the appropriate follow-up question, more. You gave me an answer a moment or two ago about speed in dealing with another issue, like the pathway, and you've just said that you would have given the short life working group priority. In terms of what you had anticipated would be required to, as it were, get boots on the ground, to use that expression, would it have taken long to organise?
No. No, the ask would have gone out to different areas within Assure, to the associate directors, and they would have been able to pull together a short life working group with the relevant skills in a relatively short period of time, day or two.
A day or two. And thereafter, they could have been at the hospital.
Yes.
Ask you to help me with one answer you've given on page 234, where you you asked the question, well, were you concerned that your offer had been declined? And what you say there is that staff, and you mentioned Mr. Storer, Ms. Rankin, and is it Dr. Weinbrunn,
That's right.
were concerned that they might be asked to comment on overall ward safety and wouldn't be able to do so because they'd not had all the materials to do that.
Yes, that's right.
That's something that seemed to bother them. Am I right in picking that up?
I think that they didn't want to make uninformed comments around other areas of the refurb because they'd only been involved in the water refurbishment. So therefore, if they hadn't seen any information and they hadn't reviewed any reports, then they would not be able to comment on the overall ward.
The reason I've kind of paused a little bit on that is that you mentioned earlier in your evidence meetings with the ARG,
Yes.
the group that was looking at compliance with recommendations from various sources on the part of GGC.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it may not be entirely clear, but do you ever recollect being asked by the ARG if Assure were able to provide assurances about the safety of the new ward being opened?
I don't recall being asked to do anything other than the water.
So if the ARG had the impression that Assure were on top of all aspects of the refurbishment, that would be incorrect.
It would, and they would be aware of that through the briefing statement that we issued on the 24th of February, that we had only looked at water and nothing else.
Right. Just let's make sure we know what you're referring to. The briefing note on the 24th of February. Have we looked at that already?
No, I don't think that we have. It is in the bundles.
It is in the bundle.
It is in the bundles.
So this is a briefing note from Assure indicating what you, in effect, what you have,
Yes,
what the limits of what you have done are.
yes.
W-
And giving, I can't find it, I thought I had it in my pack, and giving assurance that if the pathway was completed and the information was available, then the water, we would support the reopening of the ward in respect to water, nothing else.
Right. Thank you.
So do we have a reference to that document?
Sure, we have. Or let me just check. Bundle 21, Volume 2, page 15. In case that's the right one.
Yes, that's it.
Right. Thank you.
So this is the document that we were just trying to find. I've probably
Yes.
jumped a little ahead of its reference. It's referenced in, my Lord, at the end of answer 32 on page 235 of this witness's statement. Can we just look at it and we'll just make sure we understand what it says? Well, first of all, it says it's a briefing statement regarding water supply, so it
That's right.
says nothing at all about ventilation.
No, it doesn't.
And then we'll just go on to the next page. And then you've set out there, you're going to use KSAR projects.
Mhm.
You set out the timeframes, information was provided to us. So at the foot of the first page, several recommendations for action prior to opening wards 2A and B. These are listed. Go on to the next page. We've discussed these on that's today, that's the 24th. All will be completed. So what you then say in this document is NHS Assure, based on the information presented to us, are able to support the reopening of wards 2A and B at the hospital, subject to confirmation of the action plan and commitment to address the issues identified. So you've laid out what you think needs to be done. You've been
Yes.
told it's either been done or being done.
Yes,
And that's the basis on which you say fine.
yes,
And that's the limit of your organisation's involvement in 2A.
it is.
you. Can we just have a look, please? I've got some other questions I've been asked to put to you at this point. Bundle 27, volume 10, at page 46. All right. So this is simply the same document appearing in a different location. So we've already got that as a context. Now I've been asked to ask you this question. If you can or can't answer, please just let us know one way or the other. Assuming that that document is correctly interpreted as it were giving the go-ahead in that communication, what action would you expect to be taken in infection prevention control team if cases of environmental gram-negative bacteriemia occur?
Are you talking after repatriation of the
Yes.
children? We would expect the NIPCM guidance to be followed, and there should be a HIAT after which, if applicable, they should be reported on the outbreak reporting tool as per Chapter 3.
Thank you. And the other question I've been asked to put is, if the IPCT decided after root cause analysis that all cases were due to gut translocation.
Sorry, just take the question slowly.
Yes.
If the inquiry was...
If the infection prevention control team decided with root cause analysis that all the cases were due to gut translocation, but not a conclusion reached, for instance, by the CNR, does that change what you would expect to be done if there was a case of environmental gram-negative bacteriemia?
I think that I probably need to refer back to Ms Imrie's evidence around not every trigger results in a HIAT or an ORT. So I think that would depend upon the set of circumstances, and I think that my IPC colleagues would be more able to answer that fully for you.
Thank you. Now the answers, given the discussion we've had, the answers to the next questions may, in a sense, be obvious, but I'm been asked to ask you these. Were you aware that when 2A and 2B was reopening, that GGC decided not to do air sampling to give any assurance on air quality in the ward?
No, I was not aware of that.
So whether they should or shouldn't, was that approved by anyone at your team? If it's not done now, do you have any comment to make on it?
I think that they should be in line with the DLs and the cells around that, and with the guidance. So for ventilation, that would be, I think it's 0401 or A301. I can't remember which one.
0301 probably.
0301. So, and they should follow the guidance in that. Or if they're not sure, then they could contact NHS Assure, and we would be able to support them with that.
Thank you. Now let me move on then to ask you some more general questions about Assure. So if we take the document down, thank you, we'll go back to page 235 of the witness statement. And you're asked a fairly general question: do you believe it should be mandatory for health boards to get new construction or refurbishment approved by Assure? And you start your answer by saying, well, it's mandatory for health boards to engage with NHS Assure assessment processes above where the project is above delegated authority financial limit. Now, engage is one of these words that can have different meanings depending on how it's deployed. Is requiring engagement enough in your view?
I think it is, because I think that the boards understand that that actually means that they need to participate in, follow the assessment and the assurance processes, which, you know, we have an NDAP process which has been mandated since 2010. We have the KSAR processes which have been mandated since 2023. So I think that the boards who have been through this process have engaged incredibly well with us.
One of the topics that's cropped up from time to time in the context of regulation, and just put it under the same head for the moment. I know you're not a regulator, but you're nevertheless you're involved in reviewing and supporting project. Is a situation where a party is thought to be, we used to use the phrase paying lip service, in other words, doing what the rules say you have to do, even though you don't think you need to do them in the first place. Now, do your processes address what might happen if a party was behaving in that way?
Yes. So the processes that we have within the KSAR and the NDAP require us to meet very regularly with the boards on a number of topics. It then requires them to produce information to show that they have understood what we're asking and that they are looking to be compliant with legislation and guidance. I think that it is important that we do that in a collaborative way. So we meet face to face, we have information exchanges. And I think that to date, those boards that have been involved in the KSAR and the NDAP process since NHS Assure's inception have been incredibly supportive and supported of the processes that we now have in place. We have much more of a governance framework than it was ever in place before. And I think that some of the boards that are going through a KSAR process and have had more than one KSAR process, so there's a number of programmes that have gone through more than one KSAR, have really welcomed the process and understand that actually it gives them and their board assurance that they are conducting themselves in the right way and that they are compliant with legislation around their new healthcare build.
Now, the fault may be mine, but I'm not sure you've quite picked up my question.
All right.
In the sense that if I understood the answer you just gave me, you've said, well, those the people that have been through all of this have been very supportive, they feel very supported, they've been very positive. Some of them have now done it more than once, and so on. So you've been in receipt of positive attitudes. I think the question that I was trying to get at, and it may not have been very well, was, well, what happens if you get a participant who is, as it were, ticking the boxes, paying lip service? Oh, I have to do that. All right, I'll do that. Don't think I need to do that. Is the message you're getting, but they're nevertheless ticking the boxes. I'm just wondering whether your processes cope with that situation.
They would. So we would then have an escalation process if we felt that a board was not engaging appropriately or delivering the right sort of information that we've requested. And there is also the Capital Investment Group. So if a board has an unsupported status for an NDAP or a KSAR, then that will ensure that the board is not able to move on to the next stage within their build. And also, very helpfully, we had a DL in 2023 that said unless the handover KSAR and commissioning had received a supported status, then the building couldn't be open for occupation by patients or staff.
And am I right, just while you're on that point, that you have provided in an appendix to your statement a list of all the sort of Scottish Government letters of that kind?
Yes.
In case the inquiry needs to access any particular one. Now, you then asked, well, what about 2A and 2B? Did that fit this? And I think you point out, well, first of all, apart from the obvious part, that it was only dealing with water and not with ventilation.
Yeah,
It was done over an accelerated period of time.
it was.
And therefore it wasn't a full KSAR process, but similar.
Yes. Followed the principles.
I think you're probably in the search, as we'll come to later, for understanding the extent to which lessons have been learned and things have moved on. You asked about a project in Aberdeen, page 236. So how did that work? How did it go? What did you take from that?
I've got some notes on this.
Paragraph 36 of your witness statement.
Could you pull up paragraph 56, please?
36.
36. Oh, sorry. I thought you said 56. Right. Yes. So this was around the hospital projects in Aberdeen, where when we performed a construction stage KSAR on each of the buildings, that there were observations in relation how to the board had recorded derogations
Derogations from
from the guidance.
From guidance. Any particular type of guidance?
I don't know the detail. And how they'd recorded that and what had they done to consider and mitigate the risks of not complying with guidance. And what we did with them was that we developed an action plan to address the recommendations, and they've pulled together a dedicated work stream to look at derogations. But we are also doing a large piece of work around derogations. So we are looking at a once for NHS Scotland approach towards derogations. As part of that process, we have drafted a document which has gone out for consultation, and we are looking to publish that in winter this year. So it will look at how the risks and mitigations are considered, and then how we can capture approvals of processes that have been put in place. We were working with NHS England around that as well, and they are interested in the document that we are about to publish.
This inquiry has quite a lot of evidence about derogations. Have you looked at that?
Yes.
Yeah. And so the idea is that there should be guidance on these different aspects of dealing with derogations.
That's right.
In part as a learning from the Aberdeen project.
Yes. I mean, we also have the potential for derogations within IPC as well. And we have a process in the DL 2024 which states that any decision to derogate should be considered and approved in line with the local health board governance, and must frequently be reviewed within those structures. So if you're derogating from reporting measures, then that should be noted.
Thank you. Well, I was about to ask you another question, but I'm conscious of the time, Lord. It might be as well to take the break now as at any other time, unless
Right.
Lord has a follow-up question now.
We'll do that. Can I just pick up on the last answer? In your answer to question 36, you draw attention to the current work that Assure is doing on derogations. Now, I simply did not hear the last couple of sentences you used. You were talking about derogation from requirement to report. if I heard you correctly. Now, I didn't recognise what we were talking about.
So that was IPC reporting. So if a board chooses to derogate from the NIPCM Chapter 3 reporting mechanisms, then they must have that approved in line with the local health board governance, and that should be reviewed frequently within those structures because, of course, reporting is not mandated.
Right. But the work on derogation includes considerations of how one should make decisions on derogation and record derogations in relation to the Scottish Health Technical Memoranda.
That's right.
Right. Now,
So that's a technical derogation process that we're in the
Right.
middle of producing.
now, Mr. Connell asked you whether you've looked at what the inquiry has heard about derogation, and I think your answer to that was no.
No, it was yes.
Yeah, sorry, it was yes.
Yes.
And do I take it that you have read the inquiry's interim report?
Yes.
Right. We'll take a break now. I think if it occurs to you that there's anything in the inquiry's interim report that you would wish to take issue with or disagree with or make a comment about, I would welcome hearing that at some stage in your evidence. But we'll now take a coffee break and could I ask you to be back for 5 to 12.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Connell.
Thank you, Lord. Just on a point of administration, am I right in understanding that from time to time you are consulting personal notes that you made on the
Yes.
topics that are covered in the witness statement? Is that right?
Yes,
And these are just notes that you made yourself on
Yes.
some of the issues?
they are.
Thank you. So if I just repeat the informal indication I gave it to you earlier, if you're going to look at any other document other than your personal notes, can you please alert us so that we can identify it and then, if need be, show it to the room?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. I may go backwards in a minute, but just at the moment, I just want to pick up on the very last answer I think you gave before lunch, when you were talking about derogations.
Yeah,
And then you were talking about possible derogations from reporting mechanisms.
yeah.
We're on page 237 of your witness statement, second paragraph there. And then you say right at the end of that paragraph, which I think is the last thing you said, that reporting in this way is not mandated. I love that phrase that seems to be the in one now. It seems to be used presumably as a kind of more comfortable phrase than compulsory, which might be another way of putting it. Is that right?
It is.
And it might seem a slightly odd situation to have non-compulsory reporting, given the importance that you've indicated attaches to reporting.
Mhm.
Would it be better if it was compulsory?
I think that is a question that I've given a huge amount of thought to, really, because mandated reporting doesn't happen apart from for NDAP and KSAR, and I think that we would need to think about the type of organisation that NHS Assure is, and we are there mainly to support the boards and to work in a collaborative relationship with them around the new build and IPC environment. And I think that we would need to weigh the benefits of mandating against the disbenefits of the potential disruption that might make to the relationship that we've got with the health boards. I think that there is something about a proportionate response and reporting. And I think that we would still wish to maintain our supportive element around how we provide advice and knowledge to boards. We do manage to tread that line quite carefully around NDAP and KSAR because they're mandated engagement. And that sits alongside the reactive work that we are asked to do or the support requests that we receive. And we manage that balance quite well, but it is a difficult line.
I'm just thinking aloud here, in a sense, that if reporting in accordance with a particular approach is expected, is there any real difference between a board, reporting as expected and reporting as required? Doesn't add an extra burden, does it?
No, it doesn't add an extra burden at all. It's just the relational aspect of that. And, we have a good relationship with the boards and the majority report extremely well.
Yeah, we'll come back to reporting, no doubt, later on. Can I just go back for a moment to the 2A scenario and the pathway provision? I've just been asked to kind of put the question, the way the pathway arrangement seemed to work from your evidence is that you provided the pathway.
Yes.
So you set out what you thought should be done.
Yes.
But you did not technically check any of the material to make sure it was correct.
No, we didn't.
And given, I suppose that the thrust of the point that's being put to me is that, well, given the situation at the time with the board, is that not something that really should have been done? That you should have been doing the checking, not leaving it to the board to say, well, we've done whatever. And you say, well, that's fine, provided you tell us that you've done it, you can reopen.
I think that I probably need to clarify. So the pathway provision was a series of questions or phrases or comments that GGC would then have to provide evidence that they had complied with. Now, some of that would be, we would ask them for further information or another report on, or information that they'd complied with that in a timely way, or that they were doing flushing and dosing in a particular order. But we wouldn't go on site and check that that had been done. That would never be part of the KSAR process. It does tend to be a tabletop process around the gathering of information. We would then go back to the board if there were gaps in that information or it didn't provide what we felt it should.
Well, with the benefit of hindsight and given the position of the board at that particular time, should they really have been left to do that themselves? Should you not have taken control of that process?
We weren't asked to take control.
Well,
we were asked to support them.
I understand that. I'm just wondering whether, your position, as you've made clear, is you did what you were asked to do and you were not in a position to do anything beyond that. With the benefit of hindsight,
although
you
we
think
did
it would have been
offer,
sensible to do it?
Well, we did offer, Annette in her email of the 21st of December, as you mentioned earlier, January. I don't know why I keep saying December. Apologies. We offered to go in and look at other areas.
Thank you. Let's move on if we can. So going back to your witness statement, paragraph 37. Now, to an extent, you pick up in that paragraph the relationship point that you have just explained to us. Can I ask you about another possibility? Yes. I asked you earlier about how you would deal with someone who paid lip service to, perhaps reluctantly, your processes, and you explained how that would be dealt with. Another phrase that's been used by some participants in this inquiry about NHS GGC was, well, they always know best. How would your mechanisms cope with a board if that was correct? And they you said X, but they say, well, very interesting, but we know better.
Then if they did that and the mitigation that they gave us was not compliant or didn't meet legislative requirements, then we would potentially give them an unsupported status on either an NDAP or a KSAR. And if that was the case, that would go through SIG. But of course, there are escalation points before that. So we would have the conversation, first of all, with the people, the team that are involved in that process, be that a KSAR or an NDAP. That's a multidisciplinary team. They would have the conversations with the project team around why they felt that that was an issue. And then if needed, that could be escalated to the head of service or the associate director for engineering or property capital planning or IPC, depending on what that issue may be. And then if we still couldn't understand or there was an intransigence around a particular point of view, then that could be escalated to myself. And I would then have a conversation with probably the SRO for that project within a board. And that would all happen before we got to the unsupported status through the Capital Investment Group.
I wanted to ask you this because questions have arisen from time to time in the inquiry about the word assure. How do you assure something? And of course, for better or worse, you've got it in your title.
We have.
And one of the challenges I want to put to you to get your comment on is that if the use of assure in the title of your organisation creates the impression that you can assure everybody that it's all correct, that perhaps goes a little further than you're actually doing, does it not?
I think that our role and remit is very clear about the engagement that we have with a trust around a healthcare build or a refurbishment. I think assurance is one of the aspects that we cover around compliance with legislation and guidance. Would I have called us NHS Scotland Assure? I'm not sure, but I came into the organisation when it was already named. I think that we do give assurance around compliance. We are also a help and support mechanism for boards when they find that they have got issues with their build environment. We don't take away their responsibilities, but we would help support them to make sure that they can fulfil their own responsibilities.
I understand your answer, and I'm going to ask you later about any changes that might be made. I've asked you about mandatory reporting already. I suppose the question which your answer raises, and you've said very much the same thing in the paragraph that we're looking at. You provide reassurance, you provide support, and so on and so forth. I suppose the question is, if I say to you, Miss Critchley, can you assure me that X has happened, that X is correct, that X has been done? When I put a question like that to you, I probably mean, can you guarantee that to me? Have you checked yourself? Mm-hmm. And that might be going a little further than you actually do. Is that fair?
I think that we would check that the board has the mechanisms in place to ensure that they are compliant. We would point them in the right direction of compliance, and if they had a derogation, we would support them in how they mitigated the risk therein. But as I've said, a lot of our work sits outside the assurance service that perform the KSAR. We have property sustainability capital planning, we have FM services, we have RHI, decontamination collaborative that's across NHS Scotland. There is an awful lot of work that we do that is out with that, and we are able to pivot our resources to meet unusual demands. So, for instance, our property sustainability and capital planning division now are supporting Scottish Government with the whole system infrastructure plan, which is the capital plan for the next few years. And they have also pivoted their work to support the audits of RAC in NHS Scotland, and have commissioned and performed a number of audits around what we would need to do around that. And in order for us to be able to do that, we have to be able to pivot our resources to what is important outside of the healthcare build as well.
Thank you. Now, you I think, in a previous answer mentioned the way KSAR works and the which you can create an unsupported proposition. And I think you go on to deal with that at the foot of page 2 through 7, and then NDAP, which is the design approach. Is that right?
That's right.
So, yeah. NHS Scotland design assessment process.
That's right.
Yeah, and you reference at the top of page 238 various documents in which you say, well, if you want to find the various places where we're entitled to do this, that's where you look. The latest in that list is the DL letter in 2023, which, as you quote, says, don't open
Yes,
to patients
Mhm.
until you've got a supported status.
that's right.
That seems pretty clear. I just wonder about the end of that paragraph, because again, we're treading this line between
Mhm.
we're here to help and we're here to police,
Yes.
perhaps. So that's my phraseology. It's not anyone else's. Because in the end of that paragraph, you say primary role is to support and provide support and guidance, etc., etc., etc. But it means we can effectively raise concerns on projects. Now, am I right in thinking that the way the trend is going at the moment, you can stop them?
Yes. If we felt that there was something critical within an NDAP, or an NDAP is at the start of the process, so it's the design process, so it is part and parcel of the outline business case and the full business case, although we are looking at ensuring that there is no duplication between KSAR and NDAP, and they work very closely together now. What if we found that there was something that was insurmountable that we felt would be a risk to patients and staff, then we wouldn't give a supported status, and until that the board had complied with legislation or amended, then we would not. That would mean that SIG would not pass that for the board to be able to open to patients and the public.
You're asked on page 238, have you ever had an unsupported stage crop up? And you say that has happened. Then you say the status is reported to the SIG and is used to inform the group's decision making to allow a project to progress. But if your previous answer is correct, the SIG don't have an option. The thing can't proceed unless it's supported.
No, they can't. But we would go along to the SIG and give them the technical reasons why that might be.
Well, whatever the technical reasons are, if it's still unsupported, do I not understand the way the guidance now stands is it can't proceed?
That's right, but only at handover and commissioning KSAR, so right at the end of a project. What could happen further into the project is that if we had some issues that hadn't been ironed out at outline business case, if there was some issue around a change in clinical strategy or the utilisation of a building, then what we would do is we would give that a conditional supported status on the board producing an action plan that we would ensure was completed before we did the FBC KSAR. But there is not that does not happen at commissioning and handover.
Well, I'm going to ask you some questions near the end of your evidence about what might or might not be done and how your system might or might not pick up particular issues. But let's, for the moment, if we can, move on to a different topic, and that's back to reporting.
Yeah.
Because there's a tail that we need to make our way through here. The first question you asked about this is on page 239, or the first revisiting of this guidance for reporting. You mentioned the point about not being mandated. I'm not going to ask you about that.
Excuse me.
Again.
Could I just?
Yep.
Are we going to come back to KSAR later or not?
Perhaps only in general terms. Is there something you would like to add on KSAR?
There is. So I'd just like to say that actually one of the 4 builds that we have been involved with through KSAR has been the Parkhead Health Centre that we've done in collaboration with Glasgow, and that has been a really successful programme of work, and we've been involved from outline business case right through to commissioning and handover, and that building is now open for patients. That's been a really good collaborative process, and we have done significant lessons learned from that. So we are quite a young organisation, and we take feedback from our healthcare partners really seriously, and we have looked at how that has gone and the feedback that we've had from Glasgow, which on the whole was excellent.
Just so we have some idea of the context, what kind of development was this?
It was a health centre.
A GP,
yeah.
GP health centre.
So providing GP and
Community
associated services.
That's right.
So, sometimes opticians and physios and
Yes.
similar.
Yes.
That the kind of thing we're talking about.
It is.
Thank you. Well, thank you for updating us on that. I was just going to go on to...
Say you carried out a lessons learned exercise.
Yes.
Did you document that in any way?
Yes. We have a presentation around that, and that would be available. But I think we're going to talk about training later on, are we?
We are.
Right. It just occurs to me that you've made reference to lessons learned, and if there's a convenient document, you might provide us with that.
Yeah, happy
together with the emails. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I'm going to come back to the general question of how the NHS system in Scotland now takes on lessons learned and the various steps in that a little later in your evidence. I just want to deal with reporting. We start to deal with that. We've dealt with the question of why you say mandatory reporting, compulsory reporting might be an issue. Then you go on to point out that, or to remind us perhaps, that the origins of Assure are actually in the issues that arose at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in RHC, because prior to that there was not perceived to be any need for the kind of oversight. And actually there are some questions in the succeeding paragraphs which are probably repetitive of ones we've asked about the short life working group and so on. Actually, just on that KSAR, one can understand that every minor piece of work couldn't possibly come through NHS Assure because you'd be overwhelmed. Wonder if, particularly given the experience of 2A, which was a relatively costly piece of work, albeit not out with the board's limits, have you given any thought to whether the level at which your involvement becomes compulsory might be lowered?
We are looking at that in response to our work around the whole system infrastructure plans. So each board was asked to pull together a capital programme around the whole system infrastructure. Our property capital planning team supported them through that process, and all of those reports went to Scottish Government. We are working with the Scottish Government team to assess those reports and asks around capital infrastructure. There are probably about 80 projects that have been identified through that process, and we have estimated that probably about 30 of those require our input. Not all of those meet the criteria for a KSAR. So we are looking at how can we support them perhaps in a slightly different way. So it may be just something as simple as subject matter expertise around a single issue that might have been covered by the KSAR. So fire, IPC, medical gas, whatever. Some of them we are already involved in the project, so we are already giving support. And one of those projects we feel would benefit from an NDAP and a KSAR. So as we evolve and as situations arise, we are looking at how can we ensure that we are supportive of the most in need projects.
Just thinking through that answer, and I understand that you're explaining an evolving situation. Could that lead to some method of identifying, as it were, in advance, why 30 of the 80 might
Yes.
benefit from help and the others,
Yeah.
for one reason or another, you shouldn't get involved in? Because that would then allow participants in the process to know, well, if I go and do X or Y, I'm going to have to work with Assure.
Yes.
Is that a possibility?
I think it probably is, as we evolve what we're doing and as the capital pathway. Currently, we only have a small number of capital builds, but I think as that opens up and we look at more refurbishment around linking in buildings with clinical strategies and providing services in slightly different ways, we may have to relook at our engagements and how we make sure that we are involved. Now, having said that, many of the boards do come to us around projects that they've got ongoing for our support that wouldn't realise a KSAR or an NDAP process, and we are happy to support them through that. But we recognise that probably in the future that would evolve, and perhaps we wouldn't have the same criteria that we do now.
And my further reason for asking that question, just thinking ahead, is that the KSAR system, first of all, it's a process, it's publicly available, it's recognised, and it is buttressed, if I can use that phrase, by consequences,
Yes.
as set out in various government letters and so on. At the other end, you have boards approaching you voluntarily for help. I understand that. If you were to change the goalposts, and that's my phrase, by moving the criteria for KSAR from where it currently sits, or KSAR Light, or whatever it was, would that not also require a similar buttressing with not only definition, but also consequences?
I'm sure it would, and we would need to have that discussion with SG, who produce the DLs, around when we are engaged or not engaged. I think that is a possibility for us, and I think that we already use the principles of KSAR and NDAP in some of the programmes that we've been asked to support, be that in a single area, so maybe electrics, ventilation, water, fire, but we would adopt the KSAR principles.
Thank you. So that may be something that's coming over the horizon, but isn't quite here yet.
Yes.
Do you think it would be something this inquiry should encourage to happen?
I think it may be a natural evolution for NHS Assure. We must remember that large-scale healthcare builds are usually, for a board, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. However, refurbishments and reframing changes according to service delivery are much more common.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm conscious I've been looking at your witness statement, and I think there are a number of issues that have sort of cropped up already, and I'm not going to go back over them again, at least not at the moment. So can I take you forward to page 244, where we start to come to a point which I wanted to ask you about, because to some extent it has moved on since your witness statement was prepared as well. Now, this starts by asking about meetings that had been taking place between your colleague Laura Imrie and Sandra Devine. We have heard obviously from Miss Imrie, but given that you're, I suppose, in the hierarchical ways, you're senior to her, I'd just like to at least take this briefly from you. And you asked, do you think these were a good idea, these meetings? I think at the top of page 245, you said, yes, you found them helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
And then you asked, why did they stop? And you asked, do you think it's justified stopping them? And as I understand it, you say, well, I don't know why they were stopped because I was never told. Is that right?
That's correct.
But you found them helpful.
Yes.
And I think I'm right in picking up from the foot of page 245 that the cessation of these meetings was reported, if that's the right word, by Laura Imrie to Colin Urquhart. Now, I'm not sure Mr. Urquhart's role has cropped up anywhere in our discussions. I might be wrong about that. What's he do?
He's a policy lead for the HAI CNOD department.
And what you do in your answer, you say, well, Laura Imrie updated Colin Urquhart during one of their bi-weekly catch-up meetings. Then you go on at the top of 246 to say in October 2024, Scottish Government issued a letter reiterating its expectations on HCAI reporting. Is there a connection between the one and the other?
I think that there was a lot of background to that. So one of the things that GGC regularly asked us about was around the HAI reporting process and also the roles and responsibilities for IPC. And we had a number of letters backwards and forwards between myself and Miss Wallace around our role and the requests for information to GGC. So I think that was it. This DL was helpful in as much as it talked about the expectations of HAI reporting to RHI and made it clear that that should be in line with Chapter 3 of the NIPCM.
Thank you. Some time ago, I think the suggestion was made that the reporting was not being done by GGC in line with that manual. Mm-hmm. And that's something that was subsequently looked at. Is that correct?
It is, yes. As part of a small short life working group, following on from an exchange of letters from the Director General, Mary Morgan, and our Chief Executive, and Jan Gardner, GGC Chief Executive, asked a small group of us to come together to look at their, I think it was called their infection management processes framework, something like that. We didn't realise that GGC had a framework at that point. And when the RHI team reviewed that, we didn't feel that it was compliant with Chapter 3 of the NIPCM. And we also felt that it followed the public health guidance. It cited the public health incident guidance on roles and responsibilities. However, the NIPCM is the primary source for healthcare infection incidents and outbreaks and should be used as
I'm going to try and slow down the narrative a little bit. Okay. Because I want to make sure that we've at least walked briefly through the sequence in chronological terms, because I think this sequence of exchanges that you're talking about are dated in the course of the present year, and in fact some of them very recent indeed. And I'm going to come back to these, if you don't mind, in a moment or two. Can we go to 247? Some of this, I suspect, given what we know now, we can take reasonably briefly. In question 49, you're asked, in her oral evidence, Ms. Imrie mentioned concerns in respect of governance structures around carrying out HIAT assessments and the criteria for reporting. Do you share these concerns? And then you point out that in January 24, you had sent a letter to Professor Wallace, some of the contents of which you quoted. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
And you can start to flag there the possibility of a difference of approach that is emerging.
Yes.
And you say at the top of page 248 that following that exchange, CNOD, so this is the policy, is this the same as a policy unit?
Chief Nursing Officer's Directorate, yes.
Yeah. Reissued a letter on IPC surveillance and so on, reiterating adherence to the NIPCM and caveating things like what happens if there's great pressure at the time.
Yes.
And then we come back to the point about mandatory or not mandatory, which I will ask you about again. I suppose the next question comes back to this, why bother with all of this anyway, kind of question, if you're an outsider to the process, because Miss Imrie is noted in the question 50 as saying, well, as a national body, how can you give assurance that nothing's happening if you're not sure that you've been told anything? And you say, well, do you agree with that? And the answer you give is yes. Now, this is because, as you explained earlier, unless you know what's going on, you can't understand the bigger picture. Is that right?
That's right.
Just explain this to me in a couple of sentences.
So, unless you understand what's happening nationally, you can't understand whether an organisation may be an outlier for a particular type of infection or outbreak. You can't understand what's happening in, say, a particular unit. So if you've got a number of infections that are all in, I don't know, general surgery, but actually they're very similar across the whole of NHS Scotland, then you may be able to trace that back to equipment or something, or it may be an environmental issue. If you don't have that information, then you can't make informed decisions around what you should be doing around those infections and outbreaks.
I just wanted to ask you a point that I had probably overlooked when I first read your statement. Can we go to 249, where you're asked near the foot of that page, do you believe at the time you're writing the statement that there are sufficient adequate control systems in place to monitor infections within HSGGC? If so, why? And you say, well, I don't really know because of the issues over information exchange. And then you say at the foot, I just want to pick this up in case this is another thing for the future. You say a national surveillance system that enabled RHI Scotland to access real-time data, similar to that being considered by the Scottish Government, may allow a clearer understanding of health board reporting. So leaving aside the exchanges of views that we're coming to, what's that you're talking about? So is this a way of avoiding the need to report at all by letting you find out directly?
No, I think what it is it would be a real-time reporting mechanism, electronic. So currently, information is collated by RHI. We would be able to actually see that in real time as the boards report, and that would help to support the national surveillance view. I think that would be, so we would be able to consider all aspects and we'd be right up to date.
And you say it's currently under consideration, or at least you did when you wrote this statement. Is that still the case?
It is, yes.
Do you know what stage it's got to?
I don't, but Miss Imrie would have more information on that.
Now, the next question you asked seems to be something about whether RHI should be involved in this reporting process. at all. If we go to page 250, you see the answer near the top of the page. NHS GGC has on several occasions expressed a view that incident reports should come directly from health boards as opposed to through RHI to ensure accuracy. Do you agree with that proposition?
No.
And why not?
I think that because the health boards report into RHI, who are able to collate information across the whole of NHS Scotland. And we have the staff who are very skilled in that area. We have a large number of healthcare scientists who are able to interpret data and look at trends and themes and analyse those. I think that having us review all of those infections helps the process around we're independent, so we can provide impartial advice. We think about evidence base and how we should respond. A centralised approach helps the standardisation of reporting. So if you had 14 different boards reporting in slightly different ways, you would then never be able to aggregate the data or think about what that actually means as a whole. And I think it also encourages transparency and accountability because those reports come through, RHI collated, sent on to CNOD. I think that it helps to inform policy, and you can see the number of changes to the NIPCM over time. They have been supported by the process of understanding what is happening holistically across NHS Scotland.
The issues that arose with NHS GGC seem to have been around an internal SOP for monitoring and reporting, which in your view, and Assure's view, didn't align with the NICPM Chapter 3. Is that right?
That's right, yes. We weren't aware of the SOP, and then when we were made aware of it, version 1 and 2, we didn't feel were compliant with the NIPCM Chapter 3 because they had a stage of assessment prior to the HIAT assessment. Subsequently, GGC have produced version 3, and following the short life working group that we mentioned a little bit earlier, version 4, both of which we think are compliant with the NIPCM reporting now.
So the process, as I understand it, that has ensued is in part dealt with in your witness statement, because what you do in your witness statement, say on 251, is you pick up the issue of the internal SOP. You explain raising concern about it. There seemed to have been a debate as to whether some other document should have been the guiding document other than the NICPM, which you didn't think was correct.
No, that was the public health document.
A public health document.
Yeah, which very clearly states that healthcare associated infections should be managed through the NIPCM.
Yeah. So these exchanges, as I understand it, then continued to the extent that Assure had a view on this. NHS GGC, at least at that stage, were producing a slightly different view. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Let's just then look at the communications, just so we get them dealt with. Can we look at bundle 52, volume 5, page 142? Now, to some extent, the precipitating factor, if not the original debate, was around some cryptococcus reporting, which I don't really want to ask you about in detail. But that's one of the early exchanges, is that right, in the sequence that we now know about. So can we go to 144? Now, who's this coming from? Carolyn Lamb.
That's right.
So she's well, we've had a debate with Mr. Wright about whether we should call him chief executive when he doesn't manage chief executives, but
That's what our letterhead says.
that's what I know. This is from the chief executive, Carolyn Lamb, to Professor Gardner, the current CEO
That's right.
of the board, which starts essentially by saying that NHS GGC did not report as would be expected. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
And explains what's happening. Can I just pause there and just ask, am I right in understanding from your witness statement that NHS GGC is the only one of the boards that you've had this issue with?
I have had one other issue that has been escalated to me around reporting, and that was a particularly complex environmental issue that required engineering and IPC support, and that issue was escalated to me. I had a telephone call with the Director of Estates of the Trust, and we sorted that within one phone call.
Thank you.
That's the only other board that I've ever had escalated to me.
Thank you. Now just let's see how this letter concludes on 145. There's a request from the chief executive for some information. Including immediate confirmation that reporting of HCAI incidents outbreaks are handled as Scottish Government expects as per DL 2024 number 24. And in addition, some information to be provided to RHI. Now, I'm assuming from the fact that you're copied into that you were aware of that being prepared?
No.
No. You got it after the event, as it were?
Yes. I knew that there were some discussions, but I didn't know that they would result in a letter.
Right. Anyway, it was copied to you. So we go on there from that one to the next page, 146, which is a reply from Jan Gardner to Carolyn Lamb to the previous letter, where she says in the third paragraph, the opportunity to understand with RHI the evidence for the suggestion that NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde has been identified as an outlier would be appreciated. And so on. Now, there's an assurance at the foot of the page, and we'll see what it says on 147 in a second, from Jan Gardner, that IPCT say they are fully compliant with Chapter 3. Now, that, of course, might depend on how you interpret Chapter 3 or not, I don't know. And then we move on to the next page. I'm not sure what the aim of that letter was, but no doubt we can ask Professor Gardner. It appears to be a response to a letter which demanded certain things to be done ASAP, but raising other issues. Again, you would see that at the time, I take it?
Yes.
Because it was copied to you.
I think that I probably do need to explain to the inquiry that at this point, GGC had produced version 3 of their standard operating procedure, which was compliant.
By this stage?
Yes. I think it had been amended in April this year. Although we didn't know because we hadn't seen it.
Right.
At that point.
Now, could we go, I might be, no, I'm not going on to the next page because I'm going on to a different volume. I now need to go to Bundle 52, Volume 6 at page 48. This is a communication from the Director General, Chief Executive, to Mary Morgan.
Sorry, my fault. I don't have the reference.
So this is Bundle 52, Volume 6, page 48. A letter of force.
Sorry, Bundle 52,
Volume 6.
Volume 6.
As opposed to 5, which is
and now page 48.
48, yes. So this is someone else being drawn into the communications, is that right?
This is my Chief Executive, Mary Morgan, Chief Executive NSS.
And she's being asked by Caroline Lamb to come on board and help, essentially, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So can we go on to page 49? Now, what's happened here, I think, is references being made to an S-bar, which had been sent on by Jan Gardner to Caroline Lamb in one of the earlier letters, in which the writer of the S-bar made various allegations about sensationalizing of communications and so on and so forth. And that's being picked up, I think, by the writer here, by the Director General, near the foot of the page. Is that right?
Yes.
And you will see that here we have the Director General saying, it is assumed the detail provided in the background section of this S-bar provided the assurance in relation to patient safety to the Chair and Chief Executive at the time, as the assessment section focuses wholly on reporting and comments on whistleblowers, RHI, and experts appointed to the public inquiry. We also noted in May 2025, if we can go on to page 50, IPC doctors carried a further review of these cases and did not identify a cluster. And then there's a reference, I think, to the updated process that is by now in place. Is that what you were referring to a minute or two ago?
Yes. I think, though, that the version 2 that's mentioned in the third paragraph of this letter was then superseded by version 3, which was compliant with an IPCM. And I think that that happened prior to this letter being written.
And essentially what happens is that the Director General says, right, you and Mary Morgan are to meet and try to agree something here. Is that right?
Yes.
Again, you, I assume, are being kept aware of these exchanges.
Yes.
I think it's fair to say that RHI were criticised in the S-bar.
They were.
Then if we can just see what then happens, page 51. Which is a short letter basically saying we've met and things are being progressed and we've given RHI the required information. I take it from RHI's perspective, this was now progressing in the right direction.
Yes.
And just to complete the picture, if we then go to Bundle 52, Volume 7, at page 453. And this is in fact a joint letter
It is.
from both the Chief Executive of GGC and the Chief Executive Officer of NSS. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Essentially saying we've met, we're going to work on these issues. Here is what we're going to work on. Is that correct?
That's right.
And then they're going to continue to meet. And the final document, just to finish the sequence, if I understand it correctly, that we have at the moment anyway, is an S-bar of the 19th of September, which we'll find in the same volume. So 52 volume, Bundle 52, Volume 7 at page 483. Now, in this case, as opposed to a CC on other people's letters, you're now a co-author, is that right?
That's right.
And essentially what you're doing in this document is you're outlining what you're going to try and sort out.
We are, yes.
Can I just ask you generally, when one gets to the end of this process set out in the S-bar, are you now content with where you've landed?
We are in terms of the IMPF. So we had some discussion around the utilisation of the public health incidents guidance, and we agreed that actually NIPCM should be the primary guidance that should be used, and we were all collectively happy about that. And Sandra Devine went away and made amendments to their IMPF, which is now going through their governance process. So we are happy to do that and agree that that is compliant with an IPCM. We also have looked at improved collaboration between the teams. So following on from this S-bar, this work is being, I'm working with William Edwards, who's the Deputy Chief Exec of Glasgow, Sandra Devine, who's the IPC Director, myself and Laura Imrie. We are working on some kind of development OD sessions after the end of this week. And what we've agreed is that we are going to have some development sessions for the wider teams that will start to look at things like understanding of roles and responsibilities, reflection on reporting processes, collectively exploring high-performing teams and how we can move towards that function, and also to re-establish and reflect on the collective values and behaviours that are expected. So, and we will have some external facilitation for those meetings.
I need to ask you one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Imrie, I think in her evidence says, well, all this reporting process depends on people trusting the other party to do what they're meant to do. Here you have a board which was prepared to go to the extent of sending a letter from chief executive level, including criticism of your organisation as well as of others. Based on where you are now, does that necessary trust relationship exist?
I think that everybody in this process believes that they are doing the best that they can for patients. And I hope that the facilitated development sessions will allow more open communication, an understanding of each other's roles and responsibilities, because I'm fairly certain that there was not clarity around that. For instance, I don't think that GGC understood that some of the questions that RHI come back with have actually come from the CNOD HAI policy unit, who have asked us to ask those questions. I think that we will we hope to move forward positively and ensure that the relationship in the future is a positive one. And I think that the changes in the IMPF Volume 4, version 4, will ensure that reporting is as it should be. I think trust is something that one builds over time. We are working very well as a small, short life working group. I think that the development sessions can only help to improve that relationship between ourselves and GGC on reporting.
Thank you. You can take that one down, thanks. I might just see if I can dispose of a non-controversial topic before we rise for lunch. Or perhaps two. In your witness statement at page 256, you're asked about something called a common data environment, which is focused, I think, on how digital technologies can best be deployed. And it starts by pointing out that the independent review into NHS GGC suggested greater use of digital technologies and so on. And you tell us later in your statement that Assure worked with stakeholders to try and produce something on a common, presumably digital data environment.
That's right.
And try and find out how you could best progress the matter. Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, the initial reaction was, well, very interesting, but we've got priorities up to our ears. We perhaps can't focus on this at the moment, and they didn't get very far. Is that fair?
I think that there needs to be just a tad more context put into that, because the CDA, or the AIMS model, which was the Assure Information Management System, which is a common data environment, was procured in 2021, and the rollout was during COVID. So I think that there was less of an uptake than there would have been had it been at a different time. It's also not mandated, so boards don't have to use it.
Yep. And is there work continuing on this question of trying to improve the digital availability of information?
There is. So we have just procured this year a new system which can help with the CDE. It will contain asset information, so things around when you need to do planned maintenance, if a piece of equipment is to record temperature, then if it goes outside those parameters, it could alert. There is, and it'll provide a golden thread around when things were brought into commission, when they should be reviewed, when they should be replaced. But also it could be a repository of all of the information of that asset over a lifetime. So, for instance, with the whole system infrastructure planning that we're doing, if every board had had a CDA or had utilised AIMS in the right way, then we would have had a very significant piece of information around all of the healthcare built assets that we were then looking at. It is a normal thing that is done during construction. So you can have a supply chain CDA, so one of your partners who is helping you to construct a building will have that information, but unfortunately, when they depart a project, they take that with them.
So, is this mainly focused on maintenance
It can be.
of the estate?
Yes, it can be, but it can also talk about utilisation of buildings and what they're there for, what the parameters within that building should be, and whether they are exceeding those parameters or not.
So what as of today, is the state of play on improving the digital availability of that kind of material?
So we've reprocured in 2025 and we've got a new system that we're just about to start launching. We will then progress that with development guidance, tools, learning opportunities for the boards to engage, to utilise that as part of their digital estate assets.
So this isn't focused just on NHS GGC, this is general.
No, this is across NHS Scotland.
Is this a commercial project which will be licensed to the various boards, or are you the proprietor?
No, we're not the proprietor. We purchased this through procurement rules.
Right.
But we would probably produce the training requirements and the guidance on usage and any other tools that might be required for the boards, and we would facilitate that.
And each board would
Each
obtain
board
a
would
license.
populate. Yeah. Mhm. Well, I'm not actually entirely sure on that. I don't know whether we would have a license that we then.
Which you could then,
put.
and share.
Thank you. Well, this might be an appropriate point to rise.
Right. Well, we'll take an hour for lunch, so can I ask you to be back for 2:05?